are you going to pay me, Joe Leontine? When? I want to know what my next check is going to be and when I'm going to receive it.
There's nothing else for me to say to you, and this conversation's over.
When are you going to pay me? He's so scared. What's up, everybody? I'm Blessed and Free. Welcome back to another episode of DOC TV. So I wanted to share some of my experiences with finding a job as a convicted felon. Now, this topic can literally go both ways. You'll hear people say that they can't find a job because they have a felony on their record. Then you'll hear people say, that's bullshit. I got a job with a felony. I believe it's both. But in my experience, it wasn't easy. For a long time, I would go fill out an application and I would just lie about having a background and pray that they wouldn't actually do a background check, and half the time they didn't, and I'd get the job. Some people may not get that lucky. In each state, there are different guidelines that are in place as far as background checks go. It depends on which crime you were convicted of. Like grand theft, which is a third-degree felony, most places won't hire you with that charge. The other kind of charges that will prohibit you from getting a job are violent charges, which can be things as simple as a battery charge. So if you've been in a fight and the cops show up and you get arrested, that might come back to haunt you later on in life. And that's exactly what happened to me. When I was young, I started getting arrested, and I had no idea just how much those arrests would affect me later on in life. Eventually, I got tired of lying about my past because I was always worried they were going to find out anyways, and I would just get fired. The whole situation, honestly, for me is just discouraging. And it's that way because even when you want to change your life, the wreckage from your past still comes back and screws you in the end. But even with the odds against me, I still pushed forward. I got a degree in personal training and corrective exercise science. I've always had a passion about fitness and bodybuilding. And they say if you love what you do, you'll never have to work a day in your life. I got a job at a gym and I became a personal trainer. At that point, I didn't know in order to get clients, you had to sell them personal training first. I thought the clients just came to you, but it doesn't work like that. I started to study the selling process and immediately fell in love with it. They say that people that have been to prison usually are good at sales because their talk game is always on point. And they weren't lying. Eventually, I was the top trainer in the company, and I broke many sales records statewide. Now, this gym didn't know about my background. I don't even think they know about it to this day. But I ended up buying a house and moving, and I needed to find a gym that was more local for traveling purposes. That's when I came across Retro Fitness, which was like 5 minutes from my new house, so it was perfect. I walked in, I talked with the owner, and he immediately became interested because he knew how good I was at selling personal training after we had talked for like 10 minutes. This gym wasn't opened yet. It was still in the pre-sale stage, so we had a couple meetings and went over pay structures and personal training packages, and then eventually the topic of a background check came up. Now, at first, I denied having a background. But that same day, we were walking around in the gym, and I just couldn't stop thinking in my head, man, I'm just so tired of lying. He will either hire me or he won't. So about an hour later, we were talking, and I said, hey, before when you asked me about having a background check, I was nervous, and I just came up with a quick response. But I do have a background, but I'm trying to change my life around. I could tell he was hesitant. He told me he and his wife would have to talk it over and they would get back to me. Now at this point, I was starting to get this weird vibe from him. At the time, I couldn't pinpoint it exactly what it was, but he just came across as shady. I don't know, I always listen to my gut, but this time I didn't because I was chasing the almighty dollar. He ended up calling me a week later and I got the job. This is where my nightmare began. The next step was my offer letter. We discussed my pay structure and what I would be making, but I never actually got the offer letter emailed to me. This was the first sign of the shadiness I was talking about earlier. The gym finally opened and I began to work and sell. And I ended up selling over $10,000 in personal training my first 3 weeks. But I never saw a penny from those sales. I finally approached him and I asked him why haven't I gotten my offer letter and why I wasn't receiving any of my commissions for the sales. Now this guy was the best bullshitter I've come across. And I've come across a lot. He was a pro at talking in circles, and he never actually addressed the question or the topic that I wanted to know. I wanted a fucking answer, but I could never get one. I told myself that I would give it another week and just see what happens. I just kept doing what I do, selling and getting money. But payday eventually came again and nothing. I was getting crumbs, but I was the one baking the cake. At this point, I was pissed. And honestly, I just planned on quitting. But I had to play his little game before I quit because I wanted my money. One morning when I came in, I pulled him aside and I just asked him, hey, when are you going to pay me, man? He started doing his bullshit again and talking in circles. So I just said, Joe, I don't care about anything that you're saying right now. When are you going to pay me the money that I worked for? He told me to lower my voice because this is the only job I can get. Because don't forget that you're a convicted felon. Man, I just wanted to drop his ass right where he stood. It took everything in me to not mop his gym floors with his face. But I didn't. Because I knew he would just call the cops and say, a felon beat me up, arrest him. At this point, I was done. I stayed one more week hoping he'd pay me. But he didn't. So I quit. He owed me 2 paychecks totaling over $2,000. After I quit, then he sent me a text saying not to return to his gym or he would call the cops. So now I'm like, well, what the fuck am I going to do? How am I going to get paid? My fiance ended up going up there asking him for my paychecks, but he refused to give them to me or her. He wasn't leaving me any choices. So I ended up contacting the Department of Labor. I filed a lawsuit against them. I ended up getting in contact with this cool ass lady, Irene. She actually called him on three-way with me on the phone and told him, if you don't pay him, we'll be contacting your local news station to do a report. 2 weeks later, I got 2 paychecks in the mail. Now, I wanted to share this story because I honestly think people don't know exactly how hard it is for someone trying to change. Now, I'm not saying you can't find a job as a felon, but in some way, shape, or form, you're gonna run into situations where your background is gonna come up. Did I make stupid choices growing up? Absolutely. But a lot of people do. I had no idea this situation was gonna end up like this. Honestly, it made me just want to quit being a personal trainer and working for a gym. But I didn't. I wasn't going to let this man sway me from my dreams and goals. But it would have been so easy to go down the other road. I could have resorted back to my old way of thinking and just went up to the gym and beat his ass. But I didn't. Then I would be starting all over again, except this time I would have a new charge. It took everything in me to not do that. But that was my story. Other people with a felony could have went up there and beat his ass if they were put in that exact situation. Really, that whole situation should have never happened. It shouldn't be like that. Owners of a business should not be able to hold shit against you that you did years ago. And to think, I was upfront and honest with them, thinking that was the right thing to do. Come to find out, I wasn't the only employee he screwed over. And I'm sure he's still doing that shit to this day. I found out that he has a lawsuit suing the International Plaza in Tampa, Florida. I guess during some repairs on the roof, he said he was exposed to chemicals. But none of the mall's guests or anyone else were, for that matter. I guess scumbag just runs in this guy's bloodline. If anyone is watching this and thinks this shit can't be true, first off, I would never put some shit out like this that I couldn't prove. I have over 10 phone calls recorded with Joe, and I can prove anything and everything I'm saying. I just wanted to put that in there. Now, this was just one situation that I wanted to share. Trust me when I say there are others. But I didn't want this to be some pity me episode. I shared this because I want the youth to hear it. Because every decision you make when you're young, good or bad, follow you forever. Especially when you get arrested and convicted. But it doesn't have to end there. Even with a criminal record, you can make it. You just got to find the path in life that best suits you. I finally found that path in my own life. Now, it wasn't easy, but I kept grinding. For many years, I would just give up and go back to selling drugs. At one point in my life, I used to compare jobs to selling drugs. Like, why would I work for $15 an hour when I can make that off 2 drug sales? I never saw the long road, only the short one. I never put into perspective that eventually I would get caught with drugs and I would end up forking over twice the amount of money on lawyers, bonds, and canteen money. When I finally figured this out in my life, my situation started to get better. This happened in Florida, but it happens across the United States. 70 million Americans have a criminal record. That's 1 in 3 adults. With so many people having a background, we really need to look at how we can change it. If you're not getting arrested anymore and you've changed your life around, you should be able to get a job and support yourself. Now, this happened at Retro Fitness Citrus Park in Florida. The owner is Joe Leontine. I'm putting his name out there because I want everybody to know who this guy is. And also, I just don't give a shit. You know, it's funny. The guy without the criminal background ended up being the liar, the thief, and the con man. And the guy that actually has the criminal background just wanted to be honest and earn a paycheck. To anyone out there with a record, keep your head up, bro. And with that, it's DOC TV. I'm out.